G'day, my name's Justin Porter. Today's date is the 4th of November. Now, did the Exodus in the Bible actually happen? Did Moses go up onto the mountain and get the Ten Commandments from Yahweh or Jehovah, written with God's finger? And Yahweh said, "Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not kill." And then when Moses came down from the mountain, 23,000 Israelites were worshipping a golden calf, and Moses killed 23,000, and the ground opened up and Jehovah killed 23,000 golden calf worshippers. Before that happened, Moses parts the Red Sea with God's help, and the Israelites go through the ocean, and the Egyptians chase them, and the ocean comes back down and drowns them all. Now, did this really happen? I used to believe this happened before I became when I became Jehovah's Witness back in 1996, because the Egyptian Pharaoh Ramesses II, who I'd seen a documentary about, was actually in the book of Exodus. Ramesses II. If you want to find out where Ramesses II is in the Bible, just ask Google. But when did Ramesses II reign? Ramesses II reigned from 1279 BCE to 1213 BCE. He reigned for 66 years. The longest in Egyptian history was Ramesses II. Now, I did look it up, I'd just forgotten it, but ask Google what chapter of, ask AI Google, where does Ramesses II appear in the Old Testament? It's in one of the first 5 books. I think it's in Exodus, or one of those. Now, when was the book of Exodus, what time, when was it written? When was it written? Well, a lot of Bible scholars think it was written. A lot of Christian Bible scholars think Moses wrote the book of Exodus between 1440 BCE and between 1400 BCE. Yeah, that's what a lot of Christian Bible scholars think. But a lot of secular Bible scholars believe that the book of Exodus was written during the Babylonian exile between 587 and 586 BCE, the 6th century BCE. A lot of secular Bible scholars believe that's when the book of Exodus was written, during the Babylonian exile between 587 to 586 BCE, not 607, no, not 607, that's a bodgy date. Ignore the date 607. But a lot of Christian Bible scholars think it was written by Moses between 1440 BCE to 400, so in the 14th century BCE, 15th century, yeah. And a lot of secular Bible scholars don't believe it was written by Moses at all, but was written by 4 different authors. 4 different authors because of the writing styles. Now, when did Moses, so was Moses there? Now, a lot of Bible scholars think he's just a made-up character. We know it's impossible for anyone to part an ocean so people can walk through an ocean. That's impossible. That doesn't happen unless you walk across at high tide in very shallow water. You can do that at low tide. Maybe they didn't know about low and high tides. But no, the Babylonian exile didn't happen, even though Ramesses II did exist. Now, why was it written? Why was the book of Exodus written? Well, it was, as they said, it was probably written during the Babylonian exile between 587 and 586 BCE. That's when that's when the exile was, around that time. When it ended, they thought it was written around that time, and it was written to give the Jews hope, because they were in captivity, in Babylonian captivity, And when people are in captivity, they looked to a higher power to give them hope for the future. They thought they were in Babylonian captivity because they were misbehaving with God. No, because their army wasn't as powerful as the Babylonians. And also that they wanted a narrative that showed them that they were God's people, they were chosen, a myth that made them feel special and made them feel not so lonely, that there was a higher power looking after them and they were God's people, and better times were going to come with a land of milk and honey, and things were going to get better. Because when people are in captivity behind bars, they look to God for a deliverance. So these Jews in Babylonian captivity wanted a myth to build them up, to give them hope, and people would rather have comforting, delusional lies than cold, hard truths. That the universe doesn't care about us, the universe isn't looking after us, earthquakes happen, people get conquered by other people. And so if the Jewish Exodus, and historians have shown that Ramesses II had a very powerful 66-year reign, no interruptions. He was building pyramids, building all types of things. There was no interruptions. Archaeologists have looked for relics of Jews camping in the wilderness for 40 years. They've looked on the bottom of the ocean, no chariot wheels, nothing. So we know the Exodus didn't happen. It's just a myth. Now, if the Exodus never happened, it means the Gospels never happened with Jesus, because a lot of the things that Jesus did, it's based on Moses. Moses was in the wilderness for 40 years. Jesus got tempted by the devil for 40 days and 40 nights. Moses led the Israelites through the ocean, the Dead Sea, through the ocean. Jesus walked on water. Moses freed the people from from Pharaoh, through God's help. And Christians believe that they are going to be liberated from Satan's governments at Armageddon, a big deliverance. So Moses is a myth. The Exodus didn't happen. That didn't happen because and the 10 plagues of Israel, there's no writings where the Egyptians wrote down, we lost all our firstborn children because of the 10th plague. There's no record of the Nile River turning to blood, frogs, gnats, or the 10 plagues. Did not happen. We know the 10 plagues of Egypt did not happen. They're not historical events. They're theology. And these stories were written. When was the book of Exodus was written? Centuries. It was written about 9 centuries after. So these events happened. So we know these events didn't happen, and it's just theology. And the story was backdated, because you can write stories about things that happened in the past, because people didn't have video recorders or cameras, just like the book of Mark talks about. They say the Gospel of Mark was written about 70 AD, and it talks about Jesus in the 30s AD, 40 years ago. That's like me writing a story about the year 1985, and people who around 40 years ago, when I was around 1985, but just say I was born the year 2000. It's like someone born in the year 2000 writing a story about things that happened in 1985, and people that they'd never met, and supernatural stories, like people walking on water, rising from the dead, God parting the ocean because Moses lifted up his staff. These things didn't happen. And the reign of the Egyptian pharaohs wasn't interrupted. And the Egyptians did have slaves, but they were usually prisoners of war or criminals. They would use as forced labour to build the pyramids and to build everything, And so we know that if the Exodus story is not true, well, definitely the gospel story that's based on Moses, because when you think of Jesus, Jesus is the better Moses, you see. So the Exodus didn't happen, even though Ramesses II did exist, just like the Gospels talk about Tiberius Caesar. We know that Tiberius Caesar did exist in the 30s AD. But the Gospel was written in the 70s AD, with the book of Mark, the first Gospels, when Titus Flavius was Roman Caesar. So the story was backdated a generation. And even Jesus said that this generation will not pass away before the Son of Man came. And the Son of Man did come in the year 70 AD, and the Son of Man wasn't the Son of God, like Jesus was supposed to be the Son of God, but the Son of Man was Titus Flavius, the Roman Caesar, and he did come in the year 70 AD, knocked down the temple, and that's all history. That is actually history. But the Romans invented the Jesus character to build up the Roman Empire, and that God's favour is now on the Roman Caesars. And if you disobey the Roman Caesars, you're disobeying God. And just like the Israelites, if you disobey Moses, you're disobeying God. Or if you're disobeying the Jewish religious leaders back in the days of Ramesses II, you're disobeying God. It's not about truth, it's about power and control and hope for the future. And even as an atheist, I'm not going to say there's no life after death. There may be life after death. We may get to see our dead loved ones again, but I don't want to be arrogant by saying, yes, it's a fact that I know, because it's all written down in a book. We don't know. Science teaches us things and we're learning. And thanks for watching the video. Bye.